Yilla, share first, right?
Okay.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So we'll start with the topic garbage collection today. So garbage collection is basically freeing up of memory space. So when we talk about memory, so Java has a way to manage this memory resources. So whenever you write your code, you basically create some objects, you create some methods, you create reference variables. So those objects, those reference variables or those local variables, they occupy some space. And when you create an object, how do you basically create an object? When you say new class name, right? So what's the syntax of creating an object? Like you will write class name, then reference variable is equal to new operator, and then class name followed by parenthesis and semicolon. So that is the way of creating an object. So actually object creation is basically just this part: new, class name, parenthesis, close. So only that is the object creation part. So basically, let me go ahead and create a package. So I've created a class garbage collection demo, and when I write something like new garbage collection demo, right? When I write this, this is only this can be called as object creation. This is basically object creation. Now what we do, but this object is created, but this does not have a reference, right? As of now, we we do not have a reference. It is not assigned to something. So this is object creation. Then let's say garbage collection, garbage collection. When I say something like this, so we have some reference, but this does not have any object assigned to it, right? This is a reference with no objects assigned, right? So what we basically do, we go ahead, garbage collection demo is equal to, we'll go ahead and assign it to this new garbage collection demo, right? Let me just comment this out, and I will assign this to an, I will assign this particular object, new garbage collection demo, to this particular reference variable. You can write it down like this, means you have, this is called declaration. You can call this as declaration part. That is, we have declared an declared a reference, and then this particular reference has been assigned to this particular object. So Now what happens? This object is on the heap, object creation, managed on heap. So what happens now is like we would want the memory to be free up if if the objects are not in use, right? So sometimes what happens on your laptop or on your computer, basically you have some disk storage and you are running out of storage. Suppose you have like lots of movies, some educational videos, and suppose you don't have any storage left. And so what you basically do, if you want to like download any new content or install any new application, so the you will get a notification from your laptop or computer that you need to free up some of the disk space such that you can download something new or install any new application. So similarly, that is the case with Java as well. So whatever is not getting used, whatever objects are not getting used, or whatever uh, whatever objects are not in use, so Java tends to reclaim that memory. Java tends to reclaim that memory. So see, when I just write new garbage collection demo, when I just write this new garbage collection demo,
Bali,
so
Bali.
yes, does anyone want to say anything? Okay. So when we just write new garbage collection demo, so this is just the object creation and it has not been assigned any reference. So when this does not have any reference, that means that this object is not basically in use. And when this object is not in use, then Java implicitly runs some kind of garbage collection algorithm. So there's an algorithm called like mark and sweep algorithm, which is run behind the scenes. So what that algorithm will basically do, that will free up the space or reclaim the memory, that is by assigning these objects to null. So what will happen, this will like explicitly destroy this object. So how do you basically create an object? You create an object using the new operator. So let me go through the slide. See, Java performs garbage collection for your programs and thus eliminates the need to free objects explicitly when no reference exists to an object. So at line number 8, you don't have any reference to this object. At line number 10, we have a reference, but at line number 8, we do not have any reference to this particular object. So when there is no reference to that object, Java tends to reclaim that memory. Java will try to reclaim that memory. When no reference exists to an object, that object becomes unreachable. Java can reclaim the memory allocated to that object without you doing anything about it. Means Java internally will work on that thing and it will reclaim that memory. So we basically don't have to do anything. So Java has the new operator, but there is no corresponding delete operator as in C++. So in C++, if someone has some knowledge, there is a way to like reclaim that memory. Basically, there is a delete operator, but Java does not have that delete operator. Java's garbage collection algorithm, it takes care of reclaiming that memory implicitly. So you don't basically have to go ahead and do that thing. So in reality, Java may not actually perform garbage collection. The space is reclaimed at the garbage collector's discretion. So without the garbage collector kicks in if more space is needed or if it wants to avoid running off space. So that's the thing I explained to you, right? That is like freeing up the storage or like the disk memory. a program may exit without the garbage collector doing anything at all, as the program may not have run out of space. So then there is like void finalize method. So in Java, basically one thing is like we have something called as finalize method. So finalize method does one thing. So when we'll see when we go and create some projects, we'll see like we need to like create database connections. So we need to interact with the database, right? So your program needs to have some drivers to connect to the database. So you open a connection between your uh, program or your workspace and your database. So that particular connection needs to be closed as well. So what happens? You open any database connection, then once that database connection database is like used, so sometimes you want, there are like several connections that you open. So if those connections are not in use, basically you want to close those connections. So such things are basically carried out by a method called finalize. So finalize method is basically used to close down the resources. Suppose there was one example like opening a database connection. There's another example like suppose you have some file on your system. You have some file on your system and that has some contents. You want to like read the contents of that particular file. Then there are some kind of like streaming operations, file input output operations. So for that as well, you need to perform some operations on the file. So that is also like opening some kind of like uh, that is like performing some kind of like file input output operation. So that also needs to be closed once that is used. So Java has a finalize method which basically does that for you. Means you can close all your resources using this finalize method. So also when we talk about this garbage collection, there is one more thing, that suppose you feel that Java implicitly internally is running its algorithm, but if you want to destroy any object, if you want to basically destroy any object, so what you can basically go ahead and do, destroying an object. So this is a reference with no objects assigned at line number 7. But we went ahead at line number 10 and assigned a reference. Reference is now as an object assigned. Reference as an object assigned. So suppose we don't want to basically use this particular object, we want to free up the space. So what we will do, we will go ahead and we will assign null to this particular reference. So once we assign null to this reference, this particular object does not have any reference. This particular object does not have any reference. So this, the memory which is occupied by this object creation on heap, that is freed up. So that memory is reclaimed. So this is how you can basically do. You can just assign null to that particular reference. So this is all about like garbage collection. Then we have something called like toString method. So see, you are creating an object using this syntax, right? Using this new operator and then class name followed by parenthesis. So you are creating an object. So what happens? Now, in the coming module, we will basically learn about inheritance and hierarchy. So, basically, when we talk about hierarchy, so what happens? There's a parent class, and then there is a child class. I talked in one of the classes something about that, right? So, what happens? Your child class basically inherits the properties and behaviors of your parent class. So similarly, at the top of the hierarchy in Java, there's an object class. So every class that is created in Java, basically even if you don't do that extends object, it implicitly it implicitly is a descendant of that object class. So object class basically sits on the top of all the classes, and then whatever classes you are basically creating, it is inheriting from the object class. So all the classes basically have the properties of the object class. And this toString method, this toString method is basically a, this is a method defined in object class. So what is basically the use of this toString method? So this toString method is basically, it is returning us a object of string type. So sometimes what happens when you write some kind of logger, so loggers are basically used to log any comments. So whenever you create any project, you might want to print something, like print some meaningful statements that you are performing this particular task, and you want to provide some log comments. So what happens in that case? You might want to print your object as well for the debug purpose. Suppose you want to like see what all things this object is basically containing, what data this object is containing. So in that case, you might want to print the object. So basically, you go ahead and use this toString method to uh, attach that particular object in an expression. So whenever you try to use that object in an expression, we basically supply that particular object of the class wherever that particular string is expected. So at the time of like uh, basically you concatenate that particular string object in your expression. So that is why we basically go ahead and use this toString method. So I will just show you something like this. I'll create it here itself. This is not much of a thing. So private int id. So if you go ahead and private string name, if you go ahead, right click here, then you have like this generate option. So I showed you last class, right, how you can like generate the constructor. So similarly, this editor will allow you to like generate a lot of things like getters and setters. I will teach you like what basically getters and setters are as well. And then this is like equals and hash code to string. So what you can do, you can go ahead and generate this toString method. And where you basically want to generate this, you basically want to generate this toString on your id and name. So see, so this is how this is basically uh, this uh, class has basically defined your toString method. So this is how you have the object returned. So let's go ahead and print this. So as of now, this garbage collection is basically null. See what happens if you print something like this. So you are printing the object now, right? Uh, just a moment. Uh, Excuse me, Nigatu Tefara, is this your first class? Have you joined any previous classes? Okay, okay. So let me try to comment this out now. Let me try to comment this. So see, when I commented this toString method, right? And then I'm trying to print this object at line number 25. I'm trying to print this object at line number, object reference at line number 25. So you see something like this, right? com.java.training garbage collection demo at the rate this thing, right? So when you print this object reference, this is not very meaningful. You understand that, right? This is not very meaningful, but you might want to print out for debugging purpose. You might want to see like what all values your object is returning. So what you basically do, you basically override this toString method, and you saw basically how I can like override this string. Right click on generate, go to toString, and then this are selected, just press OK. So your editor will basically generate this piece of code for you. So when you run your program now and you want to print this object reference, so basically this is the uh, uh, this will be printed. Why? Because you have not assigned any value to id, so the default value of id is an integer value, that is 0, and then there's a string defined, but you have not assigned any value to that as well, so the default value of string will be null. So this is how you basically use toString method. So whenever you create any project and all, you will need this you will need to write like lot of logger statements, debug statements. So you might want to basically print your objects such that you know that whatever attributes that class has, what is the value attached to that. So you can go ahead and print some debug statements. So this toString method is very helpful in that. So we have seen this thing. So we have also seen this reference, right? So when we were creating an object, sorry, when we were creating an constructor, so we had like two type of constructors, like one was default constructor, one was parameterized constructor. We also saw copy constructor, but like this default constructor and parameterized constructor are like much in use. So when we were creating this parameterized constructor, we basically had to initialize the data members or the instance variables or the non-static variables. So how do we basically do that? So we basically do that with the help of this reference. So when we say this dot account number equal to account number, so what this basically means, this dot account number, okay, let me go ahead to the editor. Let me try to open any existing demo of the constructor. So when I say this dot id is equal to id, when I say this dot id, this basically refers to this particular id at line number 5. this dot id is equal to this dot id. When I say just, suppose I have not assigned this value is equal to id as of now. So when I say this dot id, so it means that I am referring to this id at line number 5. Why? Because this refers to the class in which it has been defined. So this basically refers to the current class, and it is in which class? It is in employee class. So whatever member variables or the data members are there, so it will refer to that. So when I say this dot name, this is basically referring to this particular name. So when I say this dot name equal to name, suppose I provided some name here, so actually this particular variable got some name. So when I say this dot name, it is like this particular name is been assigned some value. So that is how this reference works. And also we saw somewhere, one second. Okay, this can also be used for calling the object of the current class. So suppose this is one of the copy constructors, and what I basically do, I go ahead and write this and then try to pass these 4 values. So see, it will try to search for the constructor which has this kind of values. So when I uncomment this, so what happens? I am passing like 4 parameter values. I am passing 4 values, and the first value is ID, the second is name, then is salary, and then is movies. So when I write down something like this and then I pass on these 4 values, so basically it will try to like search for any constructor. If there is any particular constructor which has these 4 parameters, then it will basically call that constructor. So when I see this particular parameterized constructor has this 4 type of parameters, so when I write something like this, so it will go ahead and call this particular constructor. So this keyword is also used. Okay, I'll write it down somewhere. Okay, I've shared you this demo in your uh, as part of your email, right? So let me go ahead and I'll just create a constructor, generate constructor. So what is this keyword doing here? This keyword is used for initializing the instance or non-static variables or data member. So when I say instance variable or non-static variables or data member, basically I am referring to the same thing. I'm basically referring to this same these variables. Okay, why am I getting some error? Okay, okay. Now that, okay, so this is like a default constructor, and then this is a parameterized constructor. So what I basically want to do, I want to pass some value like id 10, and I will pass some value. So what is this keyword doing over here? This keyword is used to call constructor. So this basically calls this particular parameterized constructor, because this id and when I say this and pass two parameters, it will look whether we have some constructor in this particular class which has two parameters and basically which has the same data types, whether it is id and whether the first parameter is integer and the second parameter is string. So when the Java compilers goes ahead and searches for this, so basically it will look for this and it will find out this constructor. So this particular constructor has been called. So sometimes in interviews you might be asked like what is the use of this keyword and why do we basically use this keyword. So there are like two important aspects why we basically use this keyword. One is like initializing the instance variables or the data members, and next is this keyword can also be used to call the constructor of the same class. So when I say same class, when I write down something like this id and name, it will never go to some other class and search for that constructor. Within the same class, it will search for the constructor, whether we have some constructors already defined which has the same number of parameters. So basically this keyword has two main uses. One is to call a constructor within the same class. This keyword is used to call constructor within the class it is defined, and it is also used for initializing the data member variables. So this is basically about garbage collection, and we also covered toString, and we saw the usage of this this keyword as well. So one more thing, the concept of finalize also I told you, but we'll see more about finalize in the later classes as well. But for now, finalize is used for closing the resources that your some method has opened up. Suppose say database connections or some file input output operations that we are performing. So basically that need to be closed as well so that resources can be released. So these are the things. Let's go ahead to the slide again. So we have seen this reference. So we'll start with module 4. Do you have any questions about this? Whatever we have studied today. We'll go ahead and start a new module today. If anyone has any questions, you can just ask or we'll start the new topic.
Before we start, Prita,
Yes.
can you go back to methodology and to string the methods?
Yes.
From to string methods, when we generate, we got it for ID and name.
Yes.
But yeah, when we use override, so
Okay.
I'm not clear from it for override.
Yeah. Override. See what happens. I told you one thing about the object class, right? So basically in Java, there's an object class. So object class is the super parent class, you can say. Means it is at the top of the hierarchy. Suppose in an organization you would say that the CEO is the top, right? So next comes like some uh, some suppose you can say like below the CEO there is like VP, and then below the VP there is like manager. So like consider this object class like the CEO. It is at the top of the hierarchy of the class. So there is no class which is like means higher than the object class. So object class basically has this method. So understand that suppose we are creating some class, right, like employee.java or student.java. So there is some class already defined like object.java which has internally like the definition of this toString method. Means there is some definition already there for this toString method. So what we basically want to do, we just, and when I create this class garbage collection demo, so whether or not we are using an extend keyword, so this class will definitely be a child class of the object class. This class will be a child class of the object class. So anything which the object class has defined, any method that the object class has, so we can basically reuse that method. So that is what we are going to see in the next module, that is inheritance. So suppose there is a parent class and then there is a child class. So whatever methods the parent class has, the child class can inherit and use. So similarly, when you do such things, when you override any, it's like means there's a definition of that particular method already defined in the object class, and what you want to do, you want to basically override that behavior. Override means you want to provide some behavior of your own. Means there is some default behavior and you want to like use that method and provide some customization to that. So when you use that toString method, it will basically override. See, when you do any override, indicates that a method declaration is intended to override a method declaration in a super type. So suppose you have some super class and then you have some child class, and you have some method already defined in the super class. So whenever you override the same method in the child class, so basically whatever definition you are giving in the child class, that will be like more applicable, that will override the default behavior. So that is why we are returning some kind of like string in this. So this is basically returning this object as a string, and when I print it, I basically see this particular output. Got it? Yes, sir?
Yes, thank you, Perita.
uh, okay.
That means that we get the memory, right? Space. I mean, the issue. That's the helpers.
Sorry.
When you override, yeah, when you override this one string,
Yes.
so when the project, so you got overriding is you can get to space, right? The memorial or you
Overriding
can,
means
yeah,
overriding you want to basically.
yeah, override is just override.
Yeah, override is something like means there is some default value and you are like there is some definition to that, and you are providing some definition of your own, that is like some kind of like overriding. You are,
Yeah, that's,
yeah.
yeah, this is advantage. When garbage collection means advantages, that's just memory to managing, right?
So garbage collection is like another topic. So means when I was just showing you that demo, right, toString is like just a method, so I basically use the same class to show this again demo. So don't get confused with like toString has something to do with garbage collection. There's nothing. If you want, I can like just remove this. So two three things like I just showed in a single class. See, garbage collection is one topic, that is basically you saw how you can like these particular things, right? These were just the
Mhm.
things for garbage collection. You created a reference with no object assigned. Then what you did, you created an object and then you assigned this particular reference. So this particular reference has some object assigned to it. Now what you want to basically do, you want to basically free up this memory space. So what you can do, you can just go ahead and assign like this garbage collection is equal to null. When you do this garbage collection is equal to null, this is basically explicitly, okay, I have already written all the documentation. This is like explicitly destroying the object. So this was just about this garbage collection. So don't get confused like this toString method or this thing has something to do with garbage collection. That was another topic. So I went through like 2 3 slides, and then I just used this particular same example, same class to demonstrate that. So basically this toString method will uh, print out will basically print out the object in a string form, and you will need this when you want to log some uh, comments in your project. Sometimes you want to like debug something, sometimes you want to like print the contents of an object, so you will use a string format to represent your object, and you will use this public string to string method. So this was like another topic, and then I also went through some of the slides, and then we saw the usage of this keyword. So this keyword has basically two usages. One is like initializing the data members, and then another is calling the constructor within the class it is defined in. So these were like, there are three main things that we covered today. One is garbage collection, then another is like the use of toString method, and then the use of this keyword. So don't get confused, these three things are like separate.
Okay, okay, I got it.
Anyone else has any questions, or we can move forward? Okay, let's move ahead. So next module is extending classes. So when we say something as extending classes, we'll basically go through these topics. We'll go through inheritance, we'll go through protected keyword, then we'll see how we basically use constructors in extended classes, then we will also see sometimes these overriding methods. So as of now you just saw that at the rate override, right? And someone asked that question. So we will use overriding methods in different classes as well. Then there is some object oriented principle which is like polymorphism, we'll see that as well. And then there is like hiding base class fields and making methods and classes as final. So we'll go through each of these topics one by one. So when we basically talk of inheritance, so what inheritance is? So in our initial classes I told you that there are like some object oriented principles like inheritance, encapsulation, polymorphism. So like inheritance is one of the object oriented principles. So it is a powerful feature of object oriented programming language. This refers to the ability of a class to inherit the fields and methods of another class and extend them further. So this is what I was talking about, right? If there is a parent class and if there is a child class, if a parent class has some fields or like variables, instance variables, and it has got some uh, it has got some child class. Suppose there is a child class which is basically extending the parent class. So those particular methods or variables will also be available to the child class. So that is about inheritance. So inheritance is useful in the phase of maintenance. Instead of making changes to existing class, new subclass is designed which has another additional or changed behavior. So we'll see this thing in example. So when we talk about like in the phase of maintenance, so what basically it means is, instead of making changes in existing class, new subclass is designed which has additional or changed behavior. So suppose there is a parent class and there is a son class. Suppose there are two classes. The parent class is named dad and the child class is named son. So suppose there is some method in the class dad, so which has some kind of behavior to it. So by default it is expected that the son will have the same behavior as that of the dad, but sometimes there might be some behavioral changes in the son, right? So it's basically it's like modifying that method to some extent. So that is how we are like overriding the same method but providing some customization to that. So that is what we basically mean by overriding. So next, inheritance can also be useful when two or more classes have some fields and methods in common. Instead of duplicating these common aspects in various classes, we can keep them in base class and other classes inherit from. So what this basically means, suppose you have like many classes which have some common usage. Suppose there's a class called bank and then there is one class called saving banks account and then there is another class called as current bank account. So bank basically has some common traits, right? Suppose in a bank you basically deposit money, you withdraw money. So similarly in a saving bank as well, right? You will deposit money, you will uh, withdraw money. Similarly in your current bank account as well, you will deposit money, you will withdraw money. But do you want to like write the same methods everywhere? There's no use, right? So what you can basically do, you define your deposit method and you basically define your withdraw methods in the bank class. You you define these two particular methods in the bank class, and what you can do, your child class can inherit this methods behavior from the parent class. So you basically don't have to create this deposit and withdraw methods in the savings bank account or the current bank account, but you still can use that. So what is the use of that? The use is like it is code reusability. You are writing the code once in the parent class and then reusing it in your child class as well. So that is the advantage of using this inheritance concept. See, for example, in a banking application, we may have a savings account and a current account class. Both these classes may have some common methods and fields in addition to having their own specific fields and methods. Such common fields and methods can be kept in a common class called as bank account. The savings account and current account classes can then inherit from the bank account class. In Java, there is a class called object. The object class is the superclass for each and every class a user creates. Even if the user has not explicitly inherited the object class, by default the object class is implicitly inherited. So I told you some time back, right, about the object class. So the object class is the super class, means there is it's at the topmost hierarchy. So this object is the super class for every class. All the classes, whether or not you are like extending the superclass, by default the object class behavior is inherited in all the classes. So this is the basic advantage of inheritance. What inheritance basically is used for, it is like used for code reusability, and you don't have to write the same code again and again, and you can also like override and customize the methods which the parent class is depending upon the requirement that you have. So sometimes what you might want, that I know that the bank account has the deposit and withdraw methods, and the saving banks account and this current bank accounts is using it as well. But you might want to add something in some customization to your deposit method. So you can do that as well. So you inherit some behavior and you also have an option to provide some customization, or you can like override those methods. So these are the basic usage of inheritance. Also, inheritance helps you keep your code clean. So the same methods or the same fields you don't need to write in every class. So this is the benefit of inheritance as well. So see, extending classes. So when you see this hierarchy, the object class is at the top of the hierarchy, and then these are the classes you created. You created the bank account class, you created the savings account, and you created the current account. So this bank account class, this acts as a parent class. This acts as a parent class for which classes? It acts as a parent class for savings account and current account class. And this object class acts as a parent class for all these classes. Means it's a parent class for bank account, and bank account, since this is a parent class of savings account and current account, so this object class, always remember, this object class is a parent class of all the classes. So this is the class hierarchy in inheritance. So why basically we use inheritance? Inheritance can be used to customize and enhance working classes. I already discussed this. And also, it is easier to reuse the code. So, the redundant code or the duplicate code which you want, which is like common to most classes, can be created in a single class, and then the child classes can basically reuse that particular code. So, code reusability is also there. And then you can take a more general class and modify it to suit a particular situation. So method overriding also you can do, or you can use the existing methods in the parent class as well. So it depends upon the requirement as well. So this is it. And then there is like another object oriented principle. So that object oriented principle is called polymorphism. So when I talk about polymorphism, that means polymorphism basically means one name but many forms. One name but many forms. So what I mean by that is, you can have a same method name and you can try to like override that. You can have many different forms of that particular method. So using a same name, you can create many forms to override that behavior. So polymorphism means allowing a single definition to be used with different types of data. In Java, runtime polymorphism is implemented with the help of inheritance and method overriding. So we have seen one concept, right? We have seen a concept of method overloading. Can anyone recall like what method overloading was? Why we basically used method overloading? Can anyone recall?
When we creating for two strings, so it was creating override.
So sorry, what? No, no,
Uh,
not. I'm not talking about method overriding. I'm talking about method overloading. Overloading. I have covered this
okay.
topic and I've provided demos as well. So if you go ahead and try to like revise those things, you will definitely know. See, we had seen these examples, right? Method overloading. So this was like another example. This, there were like two demos that were like demonstrated for this particular topic. So I covered it in the next class as well, that any of you who has like missed, does not like uh, know this particular concept. So see, method overloading was used when we basically have the same method signature but for a different data type and for a different number of parameters. So see, in this method, in this class, what is the basic functionality that we are performing? We are basically performing the addition of numbers, right? So we have an add method which performs the sum of two numbers. Now what we are basically doing, we are again performing addition of three numbers. So we can utilize the same method name, and what we can basically do, we can increase the number of parameters or decrease the number of parameters, or like change the data type, or change the data type as well. So here we were performing the uh, addition of two integer variables. Here we are performing the addition of two double variables. Now here we are performing the sum of three integer variables. But see, what we are basically trying to do, we are trying to like perform the same thing but for a different data type, or for a different number of parameters, right? So this was method overloading, and method overloading is applicable within the same class. So when we do such things, like when we use the same method name again and again in the same class, then this is called method overloading. This is called method overloading, right? Now there is another thing that we were seeing now. This is method overriding. So this is a bit different. So method overloading and method overriding, this is little different. I will tell you what is the difference between that. And also one thing, method overloading, now that you will come to know about the term polymorphism, method overloading is like compile time polymorphism. So whatever, if you perform any errors here in overloading, you will get to know at the compile time error, compile time only. There will be some errors which will be thrown to you by the Java editor. So while performing this overloading, if you have some errors, if you encounter some errors, so this, you will be shown some syntax errors. So that will be like at compile time. So this particular phenomena of method overloading is called basically compile time polymorphism as well. So this was like method overloading. Now we will get into another concept, that is method overriding. So try to like focus on this particular concepts, what basically method overloading is, what method overriding is, and when do we go for overloading versus overriding. So see, polymorphism means allowing a single definition to be used with different types of data. In Java, runtime polymorphism is implemented with the help of inheritance and method overriding. So it is also called as dynamic method dispatch, or dynamic method dispatch is a mechanism by which a call to a method is resolved at runtime rather than at compile time. So method overloading was compile time polymorphism, and this method overriding, this is like dynamic polymorphism or runtime polymorphism, you can say. This is dynamic or runtime polymorphism. Dynamic method dispatch is a way where Java implements runtime polymorphism. So it will be more clearer when I will show you the demos related to method overriding. So method overloading we had already seen in previous classes. Let's go ahead and see this particular class. So what this class is basically doing, this bank account, there's a class called bank account, and let's consider this is the super class. Super class means you can say like parent class. So this has some data member variables like account number, name, current balance, and ID num. So now let's see what this code is basically doing. We are creating a default constructor, and then we are assigning or initializing our data members. Like account number is provided some value, like this ID num was had the value of 1, so we assigned this to account number and then incremented it. Then we provided some value to the current balance as well. Then There are some methods for depositing the amount, for withdrawing these amounts and getting the current balance. I think we have seen similar example in some of the previous classes, right? Where we had created one bank account class to perform deposit, withdraw and current balance. So if anyone is like missing out on that, if you go through the exercise demos that I've sent you, you will get this. Even in the YouTube lectures you can find this. So there is nothing much in this class we have like declared some variables, some data members, we have created a constructor, we have initialized account number and current balance, and then we have like three methods. One method for deposit which takes a parameter and updates your current balance, means we are adding the amount to your current balance. Then there's another method which is like withdraw method, which has a parameter. So this amount is basically deducted from the current balance. And then there's another method like get current balance, which basically returns the current balance. So how do we basically return the current balance? We basically use a return keyword. So return keyword will basically return me the current balance. And see, the syntax of this method is also a bit different, like public float get current balance. Why float? Float is written because the data that we are returning from this is expected to be of float data type. And when we don't want to return any data from any method, which modifier we basically use a void return type. Void return type means no return type or empty return type. So void means empty. We can use like float, double, string based upon our requirements. Like if our method is returning a string, we will use a string before the method name. So that depends upon the data that we are returning. So this was, let's say this is the super class. Now we have some class like savings account. So savings account is basically extending this bank account. Okay. So we have another variable like public boolean is salary account. Now what we are basically doing, we are doing public void set salary account boolean. So Boolean, you understand by Boolean data type, right? Boolean means true or false. So whenever we require some value as true or false, so we'll basically use the Boolean uh, data type. So this savings account class is basically extending the bank account class. So what that means, bank account class is the parent class, savings account class is a child class, and then it has its own member variable as well. So one question, like I have one member variable here is salary account in the child class. Will this field or will this data member variable be available to the bank account class, that is parent class? Anyone uh, who, okay, I think someone has, yeah, TJ, no. Yeah, no is the correct answer, because whatever properties or behavior that you have already defined in the parent class, that will be available to the child class, but it is not the other way around. So whatever you have defined in the child class will not be available to the parent class. So that is one important concept to remember. So this class has its own method as well, public void set salary, and then we have like is salary account. So we are just providing, if it is a salary account we will provide the value as true, if it is not a salary account we will provide the value as false. Then public boolean is salary account, so this is basically returning the value. See, this is again the same thing, returning is salary account. And when we say is salary account, what type of data this is? This is a boolean data, this will always return me a value of true or false. And when that is the case, we basically use a boolean return type. So this is a savings bank account, this is the child class which is trying to reuse the methods of the parent class. So parent class was bank account. Now let's go ahead and see. So there is another class. What we are basically doing here is we are creating the object. Now we are trying to create the object of the child class. So we have seen two classes as of now. One was bank account class, which was the parent class. Then there is this savings account class. This is the child class. Now this is kind of like some test class, that this public class banking is some kind of test class which we are basically using to create the objects and call the methods of those previous classes. So we are creating an object of savings account SA equal to new savings account. So using the reference SA, we are basically calling the deposit method. And then we are trying to get the current balance. We are trying to get the salary account. So see, in this program we have created the instance of savings account, which is the derived class. Derived class is also called as child class. So when I say, sometimes I might go ahead and say derived class. So I mean by derived class is child class. So sometimes I would say super class. So super class and parent class are same. Derived class and child class are same. So don't get confused between the terminologies. So in this program we have created the instance of savings bank account class. So instance means object of savings bank account class, which is the derived class of the bank account class. So on this object we can invoke the methods from the subclass as well as from the superclass. All the members of the bank account class are created inside the memory of the savings account instance. It is calling the methods inherited from its base as well as of its own. So we are calling the methods which were like defined in the parent class with the object of the child class. See, try to see these things. This deposit, withdraw, and get current balance. These methods have been created only in the bank account class. We did not again create those methods in the child class, that is the savings bank account class. But when we are creating the object of the child class, when we are creating the object of the child class, we are still able to call the methods which were in the parent class, right? So this is the beauty of inheritance concept. So whatever methods were in the parent class, those are like already available to the child class. So this is the beauty of this inheritance concept. So it allowed me to reuse the code which I had already created in the parent class. So this is what we can achieve by inheritance. Let me try to go ahead and try to like show this demo to you. I will create some demo so that I'll send this demo to you as well. So let me go ahead and create a package. I'll create a package called inheritance. I'll create a bank account class. Then I'll create one account number which will be of type integer. I'll create sorry, I'll create a string name for taking the name of the bank. Suppose this is someone has name, he has some account number, and that person has some kind of, we can have some current balance attached to that particular account number. So we can have something like current balance. So let's go ahead and try to create a constructor for this. We can create a default constructor. Now I'm not typing those default constructors, because you can generate this way, right? So we basically go ahead and try to generate this. Since I want to create a default constructor, so default constructor will not have any parameters. So I'll basically just create something like this. Let's say I'm providing some value to account number. Say the account number is 10. Then I provided some current balance. Let's say our current balance is 0. We do not have any money in our account. So what we'll basically do now, we'll create we'll create some methods for depositing money, withdrawing money, and getting the current balance. Let's create one method, public void deposit. It will take some amount. See, when I write this, right, current balance equal to current balance plus amount, and when I write this plus equal to amount, these are basically same. Current balance equal to current balance plus amount, current balance plus equal to amount. This is like shorthand expression, and this is like the general expression that we write. So don't get confused, this is same. Now let me go ahead and try to create the withdraw method. So I have a parameter float amount here, which basically tells me what is the amount that I am trying to withdraw from our current balance. So this time I'm using the shorthand expression, current minus equal to amount. And then there is another method I am using to get the current balance. Whatever balance I have as of now, I am trying to get that. So the current balance is of data type float. So if I want to fetch the current balance, the return type will be float, right? And then I will use the return keyword, and then I will use current balance, return current balance. So this is our parent class. This is parent class. Now I'll go ahead and create a child class. Let's say we have some class as savings account. So let's say I created one variable which is of type boolean, and we are just trying to say if this savings account, if this savings account is my salary account. Suppose you have some account with ICICI, and that is your salary account. So for that purpose, I'm taking a boolean variable which I can like assign some value, true or false. If it is my salary account, that will be, the value will be true. If it is not my salary account, the value will be false. So I am going ahead and setting the value, set salary account. This will be boolean. So see, is salary account, is salary account. So you might get confused within this. So what this will mean when I write this dot salary account? So I told you, right, when we use this dot is salary account, what is the use of this keyword? This will basically refer to the instance variable. So we are basically trying to assign value to the variable declared at line number 5 here, right? So when I say this dot salary account, it is basically referring to this. And then we have like is salary account. So we can also go ahead and try to create one method which will basically return me whether this is our salary account or not, and when what type of data will be expected by this method. We will expect a value of true or false. So we'll basically go ahead and return this. Now this is our child class. This is our child class. Now what we'll basically do, we'll go ahead and create a testing class. Class tester. So we'll basically, so here we'll like try to create the objects of the classes, and then we'll try to see what we can basically do. So savings account, I am creating a object of savings account. So I will just write out in the documentation object of child class. Now what we are basically doing, savings account. Okay, one thing, see, now that I'm trying to see, I'm trying to use savings account dot deposit, it is throwing me an error. Why? Because there is no deposit method as of now. See, this child class must do one more thing, that it gets all the properties of the parent class. What we basically need to do, we need to use the word extends. Extends and the name of the parent class. Now, when I have used this extends keyword with the name of the parent class, basically all the methods and fields which are available in the parent class are now available to the child class as well. So now if I write down deposit, I'll get this. But as soon as I remove this extends keyword, I will start getting an error here. Why? Because it will tell cannot resolve method deposit in savings account. Why? Because when I remove this extends parent class, right? This is no more a child class of the parent class. So let's go ahead and make this as the child class, so that this method is available in the child class as well. So let's say we are depositing 1000 rupees, and then what we are doing, we are withdrawing. Okay, let's go ahead and try to get the current balance. Let me print out that current balance here. Now let's say, let me try to run this program. As of now we are expecting a value of 1000, right? So current balance equal to 1000. Now let's go ahead and again use the try to withdraw money from this account. So let's withdraw 200 rupees from this account and then try to get the current balance. So when we withdraw 200 rupees, what it will do, when we withdraw amount from, so from the current balance this amount will be deducted. So current balance was initially 1000. If you are like deducting 200 rupees, it will be 800, right? So let's go ahead and try to print. So initially you can see current balance was 1000 after deposit, and after withdrawing it is 800. So see one thing, like this deposit and withdraw methods were created only in the parent class, but I'm using the child class object to get the to call the methods defined in the parent class using child class object reference to call parent class method. So I'm using child class reference to call parent class method. So similarly here as well. And here as well, right? So you got to know, right? We can use child class reference to basically call parent class to call parent class method. Now what we can do, we can create the object of the parent class as well. Let's say I want to create the object of the parent class. See, bank account dot what I'm trying to do. Let's say I want to access this method. Bank account dot is salary account. See, it started me throwing error. Why? Because I already told you, right? The child class method cannot be accessed in parent class. So that is why this is throwing me error. So error since, okay, so this will be compile time error. Compile time error since child class method is not available, or child class method cannot be called in parent class. Got it? So this is one thing. Now what I can basically do, using bank account, I can like deposit some amount, right? So let's say I want to deposit 500 rupees, and then I want to use bank account to get my current balance. Let me print out the current balance as well. Now let me try to run this. See, 500 rupees. So this is the current balance which I am getting after calling the parent class deposit method, right? Current balance equal to 500. Now I can again like call the withdraw methods as well from the parent class. So you understood this concept, right? I have created some methods in the parent class which are available to the child class as well. But the child class methods are not available to the parent class. So this is the difference here. And I can do one more thing. So let me try to create another object of, okay, this was using whatever operations we perform back, this will be like object of parent class. Now let me try to do one thing. I'm creating an object of child class, but I'm assigning it to the reference of the parent class. See what it is basically doing. This is child class object, right? And this is parent class reference. So parent class reference has child class object. Now let me try to see what this will return. So basically, let me print out some comments here so that we know that we are. So let's go ahead and use this bank account one dot deposit. Let's say I'm depositing 50,000 F, 50,000 rupees, and then I'm trying to get this current balance. Let me print out this current balance. So see, see. So we are able to print this current balance. Now what we'll basically do, we'll try to withdraw some money. Let's go ahead and withdraw the money. Let's withdraw 10,000 rupees. So what current balance is now remaining is 40,000. So you can do this way as well. So when you do this way, what happens? You are using parent class reference and then you are using this child class object. See what is basically happening. There's a child class object and there's a parent class reference. You know that this child class already has this method, right? Already has this deposit method. So you can use the parent class reference to call the child class to call the methods using the child class as well. See, we saw three things. We used object of child class to call the method of parent class, and we were able to do that. Then what we tried to create the object of the parent class, and we were able to call the method which were defined in the parent class. But we got some error when we tried to access the method in the child class. Why? Because the child class method will not be available to the parent class, right? Now what we are doing the third time, we are creating a child class object. We are creating a child class object and attaching it to the reference of the parent class. So in this manner, if you basically call, you can call the methods of the parent class. See, now if you try to access the child class methods with this parent class reference, you will again get error. So basically your parent class reference cannot call this. See, this will again give you error. Why? Because cannot resolve method is salary account in bank account. So what this will do, this will basically try to search. This will basically try to search in the parent class if this is and this method is available. So we don't have this method. So basically you will get an error. So let me try to comment out these things. So are these concepts clear to you? The inheritance concept that I've taught you about the parent class, about the child class, how the methods from the parent class are available to the child class. And in the child class, we basically use this extends keyword with the parent class name. So whatever methods have been defined in the parent class are basically available to the child class, but it is not the other way around. Then we created some methods in the child class as well. So, and we saw like three ways of creating an object. We created an object of the child class, and we were able to access the methods of the parent class as well. Then we created an object of the parent class, and we were able to call the methods of the parent class, but we were not able to call the methods of the child class. Why? Because those methods are not available to the parent class. Then third thing was we created an object of the child class, and we assigned a reference of the parent class. This is parent class reference, and this is child class reference. And then what we did was we basically were able to call all the methods which were in the parent class. And when we try to access any method in the child class, we started getting error. Why? Because it started looking for this particular method in the parent class, which is not available. So are these concepts clear to you?
Yes.
Okay, let's keep this class till here itself. So we will not have the class tomorrow. We'll have the class like on Friday EST 9:30 p.m. now. So tomorrow there is no class. Friday EST 9:30 p.m. and then next the following class will be on Saturday 9:30 p.m. EST. For IST folks, that will be like Saturday and Sunday 8 a.m. IST. If you have any questions, you can let me know, or otherwise we'll conclude the call.
Thank you.
So these topics which I've been like teaching since the last 2 3 classes, these are like very important. I will send these demo exercises to you. Please go ahead and try to like practice these things. Try to like understand as much as possible. If you have if you still have any queries or doubts, try to like go through the YouTube videos once as well. I will like put this recording by end of day today. Try to like see the recordings again, and even if you still have some doubts left, in the next class, at the start of the next class, you can ask those queries, so I'll address those queries. So let me stop the recording.